Texas has a problem, and no, it's not the heat, the politics, or even the traffic in Austin. It's pigs, feral hogs, wild boars, whatever you want to call them. There are somewhere between 2 and 3 million of these four-legged tanks tearing through the Lone Star State right now, causing over $400 million in damage every year. That's more than some small country's entire GDP going up in smoke because Peppa Pig's distant cousins decided Texas was an all-you-can-eat buffet. For decades, farmers tried everything: hunting parties, poison, electric fences that could power a small village. Nothing worked. The hogs kept winning, until a group of Texas farmers looked at the problem sideways and asked a simple question. What if we stopped chasing them and made them come to us? What they built next wasn't just a trap. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare against an invasive species. And it worked so well, wildlife officials are calling it the most effective solution to the hog problem ever devised. So how did a few farmers with clipboards and cameras outsmart millions of some of the most destructive animals on the planet? Keep watching and find out. Let's rewind about 300 years. Because to understand how Texas got here, you need to know where these hogs came from in the first place. And spoiler alert, they didn't exactly book a one-way ticket to Houston. The story starts with Spanish explorers in the 1500s. When conquistadors rolled through what would become Texas, they brought domestic pigs along for the ride. Made sense at the time. You're crossing an ocean, trekking through unknown territory, and dragging a mobile bacon supply seemed like solid planning. Some of those pigs escaped. Others were deliberately released to reproduce in the wild, so future expeditions could hunt them for food. It was basically the 16th century version of meal prep. Fast forward to the early 1900s, and Eurasian wild boars entered the chat. Rich folks imported them for hunting because apparently shooting a regular deer wasn't fancy enough. These boars were bigger, meaner, and way more aggressive than their domestic cousins. And then the inevitable happened. The escaped Spanish pigs and the imported Russian boars met in the woods, looked at each other, and decided to create the ultimate invasive species power couple. The offspring, called hybrids, got the worst traits from both sides. The size and aggression of the Eurasian boar combined with the adaptability and reproductive speed of domestic pigs. We're talking animals that can weigh up to 400 pounds, have tusks sharp enough to shred tires, and reproduce faster than rabbits on espresso. Here's the kicker. A single female hog can have 2 litters a year with up to 12 piglets each time. Do the math. One sow can theoretically produce 24 offspring annually. Those offspring can start breeding at 6 months old. It's exponential growth with hooves and an attitude problem. Within a decade, one pig can become a population of thousands. By the 1980s, Texas had maybe a few 100,000 feral hogs scattered around. Today, conservative estimates say 2.6 million. Some wildlife biologists think it's closer to 4 million. Nobody really knows because these things breed faster than anyone can count them. It's the only invasion where the invaders are winning by sheer reproductive determination. And they're not just hanging out in the woods minding their business. Feral hogs are ecological terrorists. They root through the ground with their snouts like living rotillers, destroying crops, pastures, and natural habitats. They eat anything. Ground-nesting birds, baby deer, turtle eggs, even calves if they catch them at the wrong moment. They wallow in ponds and streams, turning clean water into bacterial soup. They carry at least 30 diseases, including some that can jump to livestock and humans. The damage isn't theoretical. It's brutal and expensive. A single sounder, that's what you call a group of hogs, can destroy an entire cornfield overnight. They'll tear through a farmer's livelihood between sunset and sunrise, then disappear into the brush before anyone notices. Texas AANDM researchers estimated the agricultural damage alone at over $400 million annually. Add in the cost of fence repairs, vehicle collisions, habitat destruction. Every single year, farmers tried everything to stop them. Traditional hunting puts a dent in the population, but it's like bailing out the Titanic with a coffee mug. You might kill 100 hogs, but 500 more are being born in the same time frame. Hunters are dealing with animals that are nocturnal, intelligent, and learn to avoid danger faster than most people learn to use their iPhone. Poison seemed like a solution until everyone realized you can't just carpet bomb the countryside with toxins and hope only the hogs eat it. Turns out, poisoning the landscape tends to poison everything else too. Cattle, deer, pets, groundwater. Not exactly a winning strategy. Electric fences work until the hogs figure out they can just dig under them. Or push piglets through first to short the wire. They actually do that. High-tech solutions like helicopter hunting made for great YouTube videos, but cost upwards of $500 per hog killed. Great if you're a millionaire rancher. Not so great if you're a family farmer trying to keep your land. By the early 2010s, the situation was getting desperate. Wildlife officials were calling feral hogs the most destructive invasive species in North America. Some biologists said complete eradication in Texas was mathematically impossible. The hogs had won, except they hadn't accounted for a few farmers in central Texas who were about to change the game entirely. The breakthrough came from a simple observation. But they're also creatures of habit. They return to food sources. They follow patterns. They're cautious of new things in their environment, but eventually, curiosity wins. And most importantly, they're social animals that move in groups. Traditional traps failed because they were too small and too obvious. You'd catch 3 or 4 hogs, maybe. The rest of the sounder would see their buddies trapped. Learn to avoid that spot and move on. You weren't solving the problem. You were just educating the enemy. So a few farmers started experimenting with a radically different approach. Instead of building a trap and hoping hogs wandered in, they would spend weeks or even months conditioning the hogs to trust a specific feeding area. They'd scatter corn and other feed in an open space. No trap, no fence, nothing threatening, just free food. Day after day after day. The hogs, naturally suspicious at first, would send scouts. Usually expendable members of the group from the sounder's perspective. These scouts would approach cautiously, grab some corn, and bolt. When nothing bad happened, they'd come back. Then they'd bring friends. Within days, the whole sounder was showing up regularly. The farmers installed camera systems to monitor the feeding area remotely. Not just any cameras. These were cellular trail cameras that sent real-time photos and videos to smartphones. Farmers could watch from their living rooms as the hogs came and went, learning their patterns, counting their numbers, identifying the matriarchs and dominant males. While the hogs were getting comfortable, farmers were building panels for a corral trap, but they didn't install them. Not yet. The panels would sit off to the sides, visible but non-threatening, just part of the landscape. The hogs would walk past them, sniff them, and eventually ignore them completely. This conditioning phase could take a month or longer. The key was patience. Let the entire sounder, every single pig in the group, get comfortable. Let them bring their piglets. Let multiple sounders start sharing the same feeding area. The farmers were essentially running a long con on an invasive species. Once the cameras showed consistent patterns, usually 20 to 30 hogs showing up nightly, the farmers would start the next phase. They'd slowly bring the corral panels closer to the feeding area. Not all at once, maybe move them 10 feet every few days. The hogs would notice, get spooked for a day or two, then come back, because free food is free food. The panels would form a funnel leading to the main feeding area. Hogs would walk between them without thinking twice. They'd been coming to this spot for weeks. It was their spot. The panels were just weird trees as far as they were concerned. Then came the final piece. A gate. Not a traditional gate that stays closed. This was a one-way gate that would let hogs walk in, but not walk out. Except initially, the gate stayed open. Completely open. Hogs would walk through it, eat, and leave. The gate was just another object in their environment. This is where the smartphone cameras became crucial. Farmers weren't just watching anymore. They were counting, waiting, making sure every hog in the sounder had entered the trap multiple times and felt safe. Some farmers waited until they saw evidence of multiple sounders using the same area. Why catch 20 hogs when you could catch 60? The traps themselves were engineering marvels in their simplicity. Heavy-gauge steel panels, 4 to 6 feet tall, arranged in circles or rectangles covering half an acre or more. Way bigger than traditional traps. The gates were spring-loaded or remotely triggered, designed to slam shut fast enough that even spooked hogs couldn't escape. And here's the beautiful part. The whole thing was controlled by a smartphone app. The farmer could be in bed, watching TV, or sitting in a deer blind. The camera would alert them that hogs were in the trap. They'd pull out their phone, check the feed, count the hogs, and when every last one was inside, tap the screen. The gate would drop. Trap sprung. The first time a Central Texas farmer tried this method, he caught 38 hogs in one night. 38. In traditional trapping, that would take months. The next night, he reset the trap, caught 17 more. Word spread through the farming community like wildfire. Wildlife management officials got involved. Texas Parks and Wildlife started studying the technique. They ran numbers. Traditional trapping averaged 3 to 7 hogs per trap over several weeks. These corral traps with conditioning protocols were averaging 25 to 40 hogs per trap event. Some reported catching over 100 hogs in a single trap over a few weeks. The psychological warfare aspect made it even better. Because the traps caught entire sounders, the hog population wasn't learning to avoid them. You weren't educating a few hogs to be more cautious. You were removing the entire family unit before they could pass on any learned behavior. From the remaining hog population's perspective, their cousins just vanished one night. No warning, no survivors, no lesson learned. Ranches started sharing data. They realized that by coordinating trap placement and timing, they could effectively create dead zones where hog populations dropped by 70 to 90% within a year. Not statewide, but locally. The impact was revolutionary. The economics made sense too. A full corral trap system, panels, gate, cameras, everything cost between $2,000 and $5,000, depending on size. Sounds like a lot until you remember a single hog sounder can cause $10,000 in crop damage in one night. The trap pays for itself the first time it clicks shut. Companies started manufacturing these systems commercially. Brands like Pig Brig and Jager Pro turned the farmer's DIY approach into professional operations. They added solar panels for power, upgraded cameras with night vision and motion detection, and developed apps that could control multiple traps from one device. Some systems even used AI to count hogs automatically and send alerts when optimal numbers were present. The technique spread beyond Texas. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Georgia. Anywhere feral hogs were a problem, farmers were building these traps. Wildlife agencies were training landowners. Universities were conducting studies. The data kept confirming the same thing. This worked better than anything else anyone had tried. This isn't a silver bullet. Texas is still home to millions of feral hogs. The traps are incredibly effective locally, but the state is huge. Really huge. Over 268,000 square miles. Huge. Hogs are entrenched in remote areas where trapping isn't feasible. They're swimming across rivers, migrating through public lands, and repopulating faster than traps can be deployed. The farmers who developed this didn't have PhDs in wildlife biology. They had common sense, patience, and a willingness to think like their enemy. They recognized that intelligence cuts both ways. If hogs are smart enough to avoid traditional traps, they're also predictable enough to be manipulated. The method works because it exploits fundamental hog behavior. Their need for consistent food sources, their social structure that keeps families together, Their caution around new things that eventually gives way to routine. The farmers didn't fight against hog nature. They used it as a weapon. Other states are taking notes. California, dealing with its own exploding hog population, is testing similar protocols. Florida's looking at adapting the technique for its swampland environment. Even countries like Australia, fighting their own feral pig invasion, are studying the Texas model. A combination of methods working together: large-scale corral traps, handling sounders, trained hunters picking off lone males, coordinated management across property lines, so hogs can't just shift locations. Maybe eventually, some form of species-specific biological control, if scientists can develop something that won't backfire spectacularly. Will Texas ever be hog-free? Probably not. The population is too large, the territory too vast, and the reproductive rate too insane. But can specific regions push hog numbers down to manageable levels where agriculture can actually function? Absolutely. It's already happening. Ranches that couldn't grow row crops because of hog damage are planting again. Wildlife populations that were suppressed by hog predation are recovering. The genius of the Texas trap isn't the steel panels or the fancy cameras. It's the recognition that the best way to catch a smart animal is to make it think it's outsmarting you. For weeks, those hogs thought they found the jackpot. No danger, perfect spot to bring the whole family. Right up until the moment the gate dropped and they realized they'd been played the entire time. In the end, Texas farmers did what they do best and engineered a solution that was equal parts patience, technology, and old-fashioned cunning. The hogs are still out there, millions of them. But now at least, the humans have a fighting chance. And in the war against feral hogs, that's about as close to victory as anyone's gotten.